Hey everyone, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing the ROG XG32UCWMG, which is a 4K 240Hz dual mode monitor that can also do 480Hz at 1080p. These dual mode monitors are becoming more popular as you can get the doubled refresh rate here, although it does come at the cost of the higher resolution, but for competitive gamers, this allows them to get that higher refresh rate without the need of a secondary monitor. Now this monitor is launching alongside the XG32UCWMG, which is a 4K 165Hz monitor with a dual 330Hz mode. So we have two options here depending on what you think you'll need, which is great. And I think that's one of the big things that ASUS is doing here with their monitors, which is they have this massive depth to their lineup. It reminds me of this video I saw years ago from MKB where he explained Apple's iPad lineup and how they are set up to allow you to easily step up to the next variation if you want to do that. And I think ASUS, with the current ROG lineup that they have, offers something very similar, which is just a massive amount of options where you can really go in, figure out what the top things are that you want to get out of a monitor, and they have a product for you. And I'm going to circle back around to that later on in this video where I can talk about other products that are close to this that may have some different offerings and just the difference in some of these variations that you're going to find at a similar price point with ROG. To start though, let's jump right into the specs. This is a 32-inch 3rd Gen WOLED with a 4K resolution at 240Hz, or you can do the 480Hz at 1080p. Both of these are going to have the 0.03 millisecond gray-to-gray response time. This has a typical contrast ratio of 1.5 million to 1, a peak brightness of 1300 nits, true 10-bit color. This covers 99% of the DCI-P3 color space, and this has a delta E of less than 2. This is VESA Display HDR TrueBlack 400 certified, VESA Adaptive Sync, TÜV Flicker Free, TÜV Low Blue Light, and this has FreeSync Premium Pro as well as G-Sync compatibility. For ports, this has two HDMI 2.1, one DP 1.4 with DSC, one USB Type-C with 15 watts power delivery that can be used as a display input and can get both the 240Hz and 480Hz. This has three USB 3.2 Gen A extension ports, which the USB-C and USB-A's here can be used with the built-in KVM switch. And last, this has a headphone jack. For mechanical adjustments, this can raise and lower a total of 80 millimeters. This can swivel to the left and right 15 degrees, and this can tilt 5 degrees forwards and 20 degrees backwards. This can't really pivot side to side, but it does have almost like 1 to 2 degrees of wiggle room in either direction for that pivot. The base here has gone through a small redesign with the base stand now 45% smaller than the previous generation XG monitors, which is a nice welcome here as it was one of the more common comments I would come across in regards to the build of this in all of my videos. This does mean that it loses the phone holder on the base along with the notches that highlight the amount of rotation that it makes, but it does still retain the 1/4 threading on the top of the stand, so you can mount a camera, webcam, light, mic, or anything else that you might want to this. You can mount the monitor if you want to a monitor arm, and this has a 100mm by 100mm pattern, which this does come with the VESA mount kit from ROG, which is how you will actually attach the monitor arm to the monitor itself. And inside of the box, you will get the monitor, arm, base, ROG pouch, DP cable, USB extension cable, which is how you will power the USB-A ports on the monitor. You have the power adapter, power cord, stickers, microfiber cloth, and warranty card, which this comes with a 3-year warranty like all ASUS monitors, but when it comes to their OLEDs, that does cover burn-in across the board. Now I mentioned that this comes with a microfiber cloth that is going to be for the glossy panel here, but it's not just any glossy panel. This is their new TrueBlack glossy for their WOLED panel. So this one here, it has a zero haze optical layer that presents deep blacks under any lighting. Its advanced anti-reflective coating reduces ambient reflections by 38% compared to previous generation WOLEDs. Now my showcase of this in the footage here isn't quite going to do it justice. It does look even better in person, but you still get the idea where this is reducing that reflection that you see with previous generations. It does depend on the angle. I do find that fascinating. So here you can see the white desk, but as I start to come down, you'll start to see that that actually gets more dim in terms of that reflection. Most of the time I'm looking at a monitor straight on, and with this you still will get some reflections. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. I will showcase more footage, but this does a really good job at minimizing the more common complaint with these glossy panels, which is that it's so reflective you have to be in a dark room in order to use it. I think ASUS with the TrueBlack glossy panel coating here though is doing a really good job at minimizing that, to the point where I think a lot of people that have been apprehensive or not wanted to deal with that may be more comfortable and okay with using this because of how good of a reduction there is. That isn't to say that it's not 100% not there anymore. So if you're in a completely bright room all the time, I don't know that this is going to be the best monitor for you, but I'm going to circle back around to that later on in the video. And last, we have the price, which this comes in at $1,099, so roughly $1,100. And I think that is a solid price point for the amount of performance and options that they're giving you with this monitor. And this will be releasing September 29th, and you can actually pre-order this right now. Shifting over to the panel menu, the menu button will be on the backside bottom center of the monitor, and this has a quick access button on the left hand side and then the power button on the right hand side. The menu button itself will be a dial in the middle of those two buttons, and then this has a quick access option to it, so if you push this to the top, left, right, or bottom, you gain access to those quick access options, and you can change that in the menu, and I'm going to cover that in a little bit. Clicking this in once will bring up the main menu, and here you have gaming, image, color, OLED care, input select, picture-in-picture / picture-by-picture, lighting effect, my favorite, and system setup. In the gaming tab, you will find frame rate boost, which when you turn this on, this will double the refresh rate and drop this down to 1080p. Then you have variable refresh rate, extreme low motion blur, game plus, game visual, shadow boost, and then the ASUS display widget center, which I will cover later. For the extreme low motion blur, this is going to be really good when paired with consoles, where you can smooth out any potential motion blur that you may find at the 60 or 120 Hertz that you're going to use on a console. In regards to ghosting, you're probably not going to see much on a console just because this is a really fast OLED panel. It really is more potential motion blur that you could clean up with the extreme low motion blur mode here. For the Game Plus tab, you're going to find FPS counter, crosshair, sniper, timer, stopwatch, and display alignment. After this, you have Game Visual, which has all of your picture presets. Here you will find scenery, racing, cinema, RTS/RPG, FPS, sRGB calibration, MOBA, night vision, and user. Next, you have the shadow boost. Here you have off, 3 levels, and then the dynamic shadow boost. This really works with the following presets: racing, RTS/RPG, FPS, user mode, and night vision. This will not be available in sRGB or MOBA mode. Levels really don't show up in scenery or the cinema mode, but dynamic boost does. Next, we have the image tab. Here you will find brightness, uniform brightness, contrast, OLED anti-flicker, clear pixel edge, HDR setting, aspect control, blue light filter, and I don't have an image of this, but at the very bottom you will find vivid pixel. For the uniform brightness, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's making sure that the brightness is uniform. So if you were to take a small window that was just a white image, a document or something like that, and then scale it across the screen, it used to be you would see that the overall brightness would drop a lot as you did that with previous generation OLED panels. But with these newer models, because they get so bright, they really don't have that issue. So here it is nice to have, but I was scaling windows with this on and off, and very subtle difference if you had this just full 100% where you turned the uniform brightness on and then off, you would see it just dim or even out just a hair. It's nothing that my camera could actually pick up. So here it's interesting, they're keeping that feature, which is good, but we're also getting to the point where I don't know if in the next generation or the generation after that, if we will even need that feature anymore, because these do get so bright and they do stay uniform by default with that brightness. Next, we have the OLED anti-flicker. Here you have off, middle, and high. I've only noticed flickering with most modern OLED panels in game menus. I don't typically notice any type of flickering in most games. I have a 4080 Super. I don't know if with some other GPU variations that may be a larger issue, but for me, I tend to leave this off or on middle. But this does actually reduce flickering when I'm noticing it in menus. It's just not something, again, where I see it when I'm playing a game. It's just that moment in the menu, and then it goes away once I'm actually gaming, so I don't typically use this, but I do like that this feature is there for anybody that does notice it more so in their games, and it does help reduce that, at least in the menus from what I've seen. After that, you have the clear pixel edge. This is an algorithm that reduces green and red fringing on text and lines for improved reading experiences. It says here, additionally, this does feature the new RGWB subpixel layout for improved text quality. So the pairing of those two and the high resolution, you're really not noticing text fringing for the most part at all on this monitor, which is awesome. After this, you have the HDR presets. Here you have gaming, cinema, console, and display HDR 400 TrueBlack. And then the last thing in the image tab that I want to cover here, we have the aspect control. You have 16:9 and then square. For the 16:9, you have fill up, 27-inch simulation, and 24.5-inch simulation. For the 27-inch simulation, if you put this into 4K, it's only going to offer 120 and 60 Hertz. You need to use the 3264 by 1836 in order to get the full 240 Hertz. If you drop this to what it's considering native, which is 3264 by 1864, it only does 60 Hertz, which I found interesting. If you do the 24.5-inch simulation, 4K does 120 and 100 Hertz. If you drop this down to native, and that's going to be 2944 by 1656, then you will get 240 Hertz. And then some of the other ones, you can even do the 2560 by 1440p, and that will offer 240 Hertz as well. The 16:9 offers full and then pixel by pixel, while the square offers full, equivalent, and then pixel by pixel. Next is the color tab. Here you will find display color space, color temperature, saturation, 6-axis saturation, and gamma. For display color space, you have sRGB, DCI-P3, and wide gamut. For the color temperature, I really like how ROG does theirs because it is the Kelvin units. So it's not saying like cool, warm, normal, or natural. It's actually just giving those Kelvin units so you can cycle through all of those. And here you have 4000 through 10,000, and then you have user, which allows you to adjust the RGB values. Next is the OLED Care tab. ROG offers a lot of options when it comes to OLED Care. Here you're going to find Screen Saver, Pixel Cleaning Reminder, Screen Move, Auto Logo Brightness, Neo Proximity Sensor, and then the OLED Usage Info. Underneath some of these you find more options that I'm going to talk about here in a second. For instance, under Screen Saver, you're going to have Screen Dimming Control, Outer Dimming Control, and then Global Dimming Control. Let's look at some of these options here in a little bit more detail. So you have pixel cleaning. Most people are going to know that just because every OLED panel has a feature like that. But then you have screen move. This is where it's going to shift the pixels periodically to help prevent burn-in, which that has off, light, middle, and strong for the adjustments that you can make. Then you have a global dimming control, which dynamically adjusts the overall brightness of the display to reduce the risk of burn-in. And then you have target mode, dims the entire screen except for a selected pinned window, which maintains its current brightness setting. You have screen saver, which automatically dims the screen after 2 minutes of inactivity. Logo brightness adjustment, so automatically detects static on-screen logos and reduces their brightness to correct for potential picture quality issues. Taskbar detection, dynamically detects the taskbar and reduces brightness around it to avoid burn-in. And then outer dimming control, automatically identifies and adjusts the brightest areas of the screen to reduce the risk of burn-in. Another cool feature is the Neo Proximity Sensor. So this is going to detect the user's distance from the monitor. When the user steps away, the monitor transitions to a black image to protect against panel burn-in. When the user returns, content is instantly restored on screen. For this, you can adjust the distance. It offers 60, 90, and 120 centimeters, or you can actually do the tailored mode where you will set the distance and then it will go off of that. After that, you have the input select tab. Nothing special here. The only thing I wanted to confirm is that it does show the USB-C for that video input. Next, you have the picture-in-picture / picture-by-picture mode. Here you can choose between the 4 different corners if you're going to do picture-in-picture, and then of course you can select the picture-by-picture. For the source on the bottom, you're just dictating which one is which. And then you have the color setting. This is interesting because this actually allows you to adjust the picture preset for either video input. I've not seen that before on another monitor where it allows you to actually do that on top of keeping this in the picture-in-picture or picture-by-picture mode. And then at the bottom, you have the picture-in-picture size. Here you have small, middle, and large. Next, you have lighting effect. Here you will find Aura Sync or Aura RGB. If you enable Aura Sync and you have that on your PC via Armory Crate, it will essentially sync up all of your lighting. With the Aura RGB, you have off, rainbow, color cycle, and then at the bottom you have static, breathing, and strobing, where you can choose RGB CMY for the colors. After this, you have the My Favorite tab. Here you have Shortcut and then Customize Setting. For Customize Setting, you have 2 slots that you can save basically your own preset to. For Shortcut, this is when we're looking at the radial dial here for the menu, where if you just simply push it in a direction, it gives you a quick menu access option. Here you will have Game Plus, Game Visual, Frame Rate Boost, Brightness, Mute, Shadow Boost, Contrast, Input Select, HDR setting, blue light filter, color temperature, volume, pixel cleaning, and then you have those customized settings for 1 and 2. And then underneath all of this, you can change that quick access menu button on the left-hand side of the dial. It will have all of the same different options that I just showcased for the dial. And then last, you have the system setup. Here you will find language, sound, USB setup, power indicator, power key lock, power setting, OSD setup, DisplayPort stream, DSC, ASUS Power Sync, information, and then all reset. Since I'm already on the screen for DisplayPort stream, you have the option of DP 1.2 or 1.4. This obviously does have the display stream compression, so we don't have the DP 2.1 where we could do the 4K 240 Hz without the display stream compression, but I'm going to come back to that here in a minute, and I'm going to showcase the different refresh rate options you will have if you turn that off. Going back to the top though, starting with the USB setup, here we have the options for the KVM switch. So you can do auto detection, or you can say this is going to be USB-C or the USB-B. For the Type-C bandwidth, you have the option of 2.0 or 3.2. And then for the USB hub, you can have this so it is off during standby or on during standby, depending on whether or not you need to charge some items or just keep some powered. And then for the power settings here, you have performance mode and power saving mode. By default, when you start this up for the first time, this is going to be in power saving mode. Do keep that in mind. Next, I want to cover the refresh rates that you will get if you turn DSC off. So for 4K, you will get 144 Hertz, 120, 100, 97, and 60. Now this is going to be if you're doing the PC settings through the NVIDIA control panel. If you go to the top and you're just choosing the resolution, you can unlock a little bit more here because you'll get 59, 50, 30, 29, 25, 24, and 23. For 1440p, you just get 144 Hertz, and that will be the same for 1080p, and that's if you're just in that PC section. If you go up to the top and you actually change this over to essentially the Ultra HD, HD SD, and now you're going to do the 1080p there, you're going to have 120 Hertz, 119, 100, 60, 59, 50, 30, 29, 25, 24, and 23. So you unlock a little bit more if you do go to the different resolution preset there than just staying at the bottom with PC. But again, these are all going to be if DSC is turned off. Shifting over now to my test results, starting with the on-screen response time testing tool. Here, this thing is incredibly fast. I never get the 0.03 millisecond gray to gray response time, but also with this, in terms of looking at gray to gray, I'm not using their same tool, so I do keep that in mind. Think about this as another data point. Comparing this to the other OLEDs that I've tested, this is right up there with the rest of them. This thing is incredibly fast. So when we're looking at our average complete time, it is 0.92 milliseconds. For the 02550, which is going to be the black to white to black transition, that is 1.9 milliseconds. Best here was 0.6, worst was 1.1. When we look at the perceived response time, outside of the 204 and the 255 here, where we are getting that 1.1, everything is sub 1 millisecond, which is awesome. In terms of RGB overshoot, which would show up as inverse ghosting, we're seeing a couple numbers here and there on the chart, but outside of that, that's not anything that would translate to something visible that you would see on screen. You're really not going to see any ghosting or inverse ghosting with most or all OLED panels because the pixel response with them is so fast. And then the visual response rating, here it's taking the information from the perceived response time and the RGB overshoot, and then it's essentially combining them, scaling them, and then grading them. Here we have a 95.8, and that is uniform across the board. In fact, this is the most uniform result I've had out of all the OLEDs that I've tested. This thing ranked really, really high, but it's an OLED, so I would expect nothing less than a really good result when it comes to the response time. Next, we have the results from the SpiderX color calibration tool. Here, I'm just trying to provide more information. The claim here is 99% coverage of the DCI-P3 color space. Color space and color gamut are different. Here, I'm actually testing the color gamut coverage. Starting with sRGB, we have 100% coverage of the sRGB color gamut, and then 77% of the Adobe RGB, 77% of the DCI-P3, and then 71% of the NTSC. And with the results for sRGB, it will be lower than the other modes. That is always the case when it comes to the test results that I get when I'm testing the color gamut. When we're looking at DCI-P3, here we have 100% coverage of the sRGB, 90% of the Adobe RGB, 95% of the DCI-P3, and then 88% of the NTSC. Next, we have the wide gamut, which is essentially the same as DCI-P3. The only difference here is going to be it has 91% of the Adobe RGB coverage instead of 90%. For all the footage in this video, though, I do have it on the wide gamut color space. So this is the ASUS Display Widget Center app. You do not have to download this if you do not want to, but if you do, you have some features here that you won't find in the in-panel menu. Since I've showcased this last, they've actually added a couple of new features and they've changed some things. I'm going to start with the tabs on the left here, and we will get to some of those changes. Here we have Game Visual, Game Plus, OLED Care, Multi-Screen, Hotkey, App Tweaker, System Settings, Smart Voice Control, which is a new one, Color Calibration, another new one, and then you have the Calibration Control for the OSD, which is another new one. Starting with the Game Visual tab, here you will have all of the same picture presets that you find in the in-panel menu, but on top of that you will have the AI Visual. Essentially, this is using AI to pick up on whatever's on screen, and then if you have actually checked off on the different options over here, if that particular thing is on screen, a first-person shooter, it will actually change over to that picture preset. And you can tailor this. You don't have to leave all of these checked. If you want it so that if there's something else that is on screen that's not here, it can remain unchanged, or you can actually have it click into whatever picture preset you want based on those other options. When we click on top of just a regular picture preset, here you're going to have image and color and all the adjustments that you're going to find there. We don't have certain things like variable overdrive because this is an OLED. It doesn't have variable overdrive. It doesn't need it because it's so fast. One of the other things that they've added here is going to be HDR. They didn't have that in the previous versions that I used. Now, if I click on this, it actually just stops the recording because it can't record for HDR. So I'm not going to mess with that, but I like the fact that they did add this in there because previously, like I said, we didn't have that. You can actually adjust these things too, and then you can compare these. So if I've chosen racing and I've made some adjustments to it and then I click compare, it will actually reset everything so you can see with your adjustments what that will actually look like. After that, we have Game Plus. Here, just clicking on any of these modes will give you the options that are associated with that. These are the same things that you're going to find in the in-panel menu. Then we have OLED Care. You have all your options here. Two of the ones that you won't find in the in-panel menu. Boundary detection. So with this, reduce the burn-in risk of boundary in image, especially when watching movies or video content with persistent black bars or picture-by-picture conditions. This you will not find in the in-panel menu. And then the target mode. I talked about this earlier when I was covering the in-panel settings, but it's not one that you find there. You actually need this in order to use it, which is the entire screen dims, but the targeted pinned window maintains its brightness. So these are two modes you need this app in order to enable. After that, we have multi-screen, so we have multi-frame, the options there, picture-in-picture / picture-by-picture settings, and then our KVM settings. Hotkey, if you want to assign hotkeys, and you can just quickly make adjustments by clicking those in, and it will change the picture preset or the brightness or whatever. You can do that if you want to. App Tweaker. Here, choose an application. It's kind of a different route. Instead of using the AI visual, here I click an app or a game, and if that pops up, it will then click into a particular picture preset. Then we have system settings. Big thing here is just HDR auto detection if you want that on or off. And then you can enable HDR from this as well. And then after that, we have the smart voice control. So with this, I'm going to bring this over right here. So I could type something in, or I can say something like FPS mode. And then what this is going to do is switch this over then to the FPS mode from the Game Visual tab. The big thing that I've noticed here is that kind of took a while. Maybe easier for me to potentially have the hotkey or something else if I wanted to do that, but this will only get faster with time, and this is still in the beta mode. After that, we have color calibration. This is pretty cool. I've only seen this on an LG monitor. Essentially, you get to use, for ASUS here, it's going to be their ProArt software, where you do need a color calibration tool to utilize this, but you can calibrate this monitor even more so than those in-panel settings. So if you have one of those tools, and they're not cheap, but if you do have one, this opens up even more options for you, which is awesome. I like seeing that they've added this in there. But again, it's an expensive tool, so I don't think most casual gamers are going to have that tool. I have it because I use it here for the channel, but your average gamer probably not. But anybody else out there that just happens to have one of those, whether you're using it for the work that you do or maybe you do some testing as well, you can use it with this monitor now. And then we have the calibration control for the OSD. So you've never been able to adjust any of the settings for the dial, the menu dial on this. You always have to make those adjustments through the panel menu. This allows you to do that, but it doesn't give you everything. So here is our options. We're missing certain things from this though. Hopefully we get those over time. So in the in-panel menu, you have a lot more options here, but this is definitely a start. So you can make those adjustments if you want to. And so that's going to be the ASUS Display Widget Center app. Shifting over to consoles and what you can do with those. Here we have the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. Basically 4K, 120 Hertz or 60 Hertz. You can do 1440p, you can do 1080p. You do have a variable refresh rate on both. You do have auto low latency mode on both. Essentially, you have all of the options. The only thing with the Xbox is you do not have access to Dolby Vision because that's a proprietary type of HDR. So you have all the options when it comes to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X at your disposal, outside of not having Dolby Vision when it comes to the Xbox Series X. A new addition to my testing is going to be the Switch 2 in docked mode. For resolution, you have 720p, 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. In terms of the variable refresh rates, they did initially say that you would have that in docked mode, but then Nintendo retracted that. So it is only in the undocked or handheld mode. So you do not get variable refresh rate, but here you are going to get the auto low latency mode. For the 120 Hertz, this is weird because it is only compatible with 1080p and 1440p. So you do have to downgrade the resolution, and then it only works in a handful of games, and I don't actually own any of those games. So for right now, this is locked at 4K 60 FPS for the Nintendo Switch 2. So now that I've covered the specs, in-panel settings, my test results, the ASUS Display Widget app, and what you can do with consoles, let's get into what I like about this monitor, starting with the overall performance, which is amazing. This being an OLED though, I expect that to a certain degree because most OLEDs that I've reviewed, they're all extremely vibrant with their colors and they have an ultra fast response time. That's one of the big draws of an OLED. What I think ASUS does better than a lot of other companies is two main things. One is when you look at their lineup, they have a ton of different options for you to choose from, where a lot of other companies, they kind of box you in. It's like, hey, here's our 4 options when it comes to OLEDs. Here's the prices. There's nothing really in between. ASUS has done a good job at actually filling those gaps. So you're not really boxed into potentially compromising on certain things that you may want with their monitors. They literally have such a large range of different versions, both in the XG series, but also when we're looking at the PG series as well. So for me, I think ASUS is towards the top of the list when it comes to an expansive lineup that will meet a lot of different needs. And the second thing that they do, which I also think they do better than a lot of other companies, is they give you a high level of customization across the board when it comes to the in-panel settings, both with the panel menu on the monitor and also with the Display Widget Center. Especially now that they've added more features to the Display Widget Center, more specifically the calibration option for those that have a color calibration tool, like the Spider X from Datacolor or the Display Plus from Calibrite. And when I'm talking about customization here, that's ranging from just the different options that you can change within the picture presets, the things that you can change to HDR, the fact that you can even change HDR in terms of the brightness and contrast. A lot of monitors do not offer that, especially OLEDs. They kind of lock you into their presets. Some don't even have any, but if they do have them, they kind of lock you right into that preset. There's not much you can change once you enable that. Here, they're giving you more options. We're looking at the aspect control, how you can change it to the 27-inch or the 24.5. And now we have a dual mode monitor where you can do 240 hertz or you can do 480 hertz. There's just a ton of customization. There's just a ton of options that they give you here. And that even goes over into their OLED care features, which just is more robust than all of the other OLED panels I reviewed. There are some that come close, but nobody quite matches the amount of OLED care feature options that they give you with their panels. Just looking at this monitor, you have 10 options to choose from, where most of the time I may find like 3 to 5 options when it comes to other OLED monitors. All of this helps protect your monitor from the dreaded burn-in, which is the most common reason I hear people say that they haven't bought an OLED yet. They're afraid of getting burn-in, but realistically, when you're looking at a lot of the things that they put into these monitors to prevent that, like the custom heatsink, when you're looking at the amount of OLED care features, if you're doing basic things like turning off your PC or the screen when you leave instead of just leaving it on, burn-in is going to be 5+ years away from even being a possibility. If it happened before that, you're covered by their 3-year warranty, so I don't think burn-in is as scary as a lot of people make it out to be. But let's go ahead and say you're not going to do certain things that are more on the user end. I'm not going to turn off the monitor when I leave. I'm not going to turn off my PC. I don't want to mess with that stuff. They've built in features that help you with that. They have a screensaver mode, so if you leave for a long time, the monitor is just going to turn off. If you turn on that Neo proximity sensor, if you actually leave from this certain distance that you set, after a short amount of time, the monitor is just going to turn off. They're packing this thing with features because they know the user has trouble with certain things, like turning off the monitor if they're just going to walk away, so they make it easy for you. That's the stuff that I really like about ASUS when it comes to these monitors, because they are listening to these complaints from the community and from customers, and then they're figuring out a solution. And another part of listening to the community and consumers is making the stand smaller. So again, that's been a complaint that I've heard on my other XG reviews, is that people just don't like how bulky the stand was. They've made that so much smaller. It fits the design better, in my opinion. It just looks really, really nice. It's very sleek and minimal now. And I think another part of listening to feedback from the community and consumers was they really like the glossy panels and how vibrant the colors are on those, but they don't like just how reflective it is. So now they have the new TrueBlack glossy coating on this, where we have this really good reduction in those reflections, especially when compared to previous glossy panel models. Now, does it completely get rid of the reflection? No, but it does make a very noticeable difference, to the point where I think some people who have been on the fence about getting a glossy panel might finally get this monitor. Now, if your room has a ton of natural light and windows in it, or just a ton of light in general, I don't know that I would recommend this monitor if you're going to be working with a lot of really dark images on screen, since you can still see a reflection in that. But it does diffuse that reflection a good amount. So when I'm in my office, I have the 4 lights on. I may have the lights on the back panel on the wall, on the desk. I may even have my LED light that I use for recording on. And even with all of that, I can still play games with this that are darker, and I don't really have a huge issue with it. If it was just completely black, then maybe I'm going to see a large amount of reflection. But again, it diffuses it to the point where if I'm doing things in Premiere Pro, my brain doesn't actually focus on that reflection. It kind of sees past it. It's almost like it just forgets that it's even there. Or if I'm playing a really dark game, my brain just kind of looks beyond that, because it's not only diffusing that, but it is so much darker than on other glossy panels. Now, if I'm going to compare this to the most reflective monitor I've reviewed, that's going to be the Gigabyte MO34WQC. it's night and day in terms of the difference, because that one actually looked almost like it was a mirror. It was very distracting, even if there was just a little bit of light in the room and you had a dark image on screen. So with this one, I can confidently say that this is the best glossy WOLED I've used because of how much they've reduced the reflectiveness of the panel. Now, a big draw for this monitor is going to be the dual mode or the frame rate boost mode, which is just another example of how many options ROG is giving you here, because for those competitive FPS players, you can double the refresh rate to 480 Hz while still keeping the super fast response time. You sacrifice the resolution here, so you will be playing on a 32-inch screen at 1080p, but you can also adjust the aspect ratio here to the 27-inch or 24.5-inch modes. All of these for me played really well, and I didn't have any issues with accuracy, but I don't really have the tools to truly test that, so hopefully Optimum Tech does that at some point if he reviews this monitor. Of course, hitting 480 Hz in a game, even if it is at 1080p, means you're going to have a pretty beefy GPU, so do keep that in mind. And for all the footage in this video, I'm using a 4080 Super. I enjoyed messing around with the various aspect ratios with the frame rate boost mode, and the only issue I ran into was with Doom Eternal not wanting to lock in 480 Hz for the cap with variable refresh rate enabled, so I actually had to disable that and then leave the FPS uncapped, which meant it would say it's hitting 500 plus FPS, which wouldn't be true here. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to try and problem solve this, but outside of this, everything else ran smooth for me and locked in or capped out at 480 Hz with all of my tests. So needless to say, ROG has another incredible monitor on their hands, and I would say this is my favorite WOLED monitor I've reviewed to date. A couple of things I want to cover here before we finish the video out. Text clarity on this looks really good. I don't notice any text fringing on this panel or any pixelation. They have the clear pixel edge to help with any text fringing, but honestly, I couldn't notice a difference with it on or off because I don't notice any text fringing here in the first place. A KVM switch is always welcomed when it comes to a monitor, along with the extra USB ports, and here it's nice to use the USB-A's or the USB-C if you need it. The USB-C doubling as a video input is also a nice extra to have, but the limitation of the 15 watts here means it won't be charging your ROG Ally or laptop if you connect it. Now earlier I mentioned I don't have any negatives when it comes to this monitor, but I do have a couple of gray area things, which are things you may or may not care about. And I would say a glossy panel is always going to be a gray area thing because you either are going to like it or you're not. ROG has done a great job here at reducing the reflection to the point that I think it might sway more people over to using a glossy panel, but I would still say that this is something you would want to consider before buying based on the amount of light that's in your room. Now, one thing to know about OLEDs is that they usually have a border around the panel. This one does too. I've had plenty of comments on my other videos about that, so I wanted to make sure everybody is aware that that is the case here. That way you don't get this and then you're upset that you have this border that is quite noticeable. And that's going to be it for the gray area things. Because this monitor offers so much, that's all I could come up with. In terms of their lineup, you have their PG series and their XG series to consider, with the PG series usually having Dolby Vision, a metal tripod stand, and higher wattage power delivery for the USB-C at 90 watts typically. The PG series can be a couple of $100s more, so you have to consider if those things are worth it to you or not. And a lot of times from what I've noticed, ROG is taking some of their PG series monitors, they're making some adjustments to them, they're making some improvements, and then they're bringing it to their XG series lineup. So you can get a lot of the things that you find with the PG series monitors, but at a lower price point. And I think this is one of the reasons why we see such an expansive lineup to ROG's monitors, along with them just wanting to fill in certain gaps that they're seeing in the market. So if you don't need Dolby Vision, the metal tripod stand, or higher power delivery for the USB-C, then you can choose some of their XG monitors. If you don't want the dual mode, but you want a WOLED, they have options for you. If you want matte coating versus glossy coating panels, they have those options. 4K versus 1440p, they have a wide range of refresh rates with those monitors. If you didn't want the 4K but you wanted the higher refresh rate, you could get the PG27AQDP, which is a 1440p 480Hz OLED. Now, I can't cover every single option in this video, but I would encourage you to check out their lineup and explore just how many options they have, because I guarantee you, you're gonna find one that fits your needs. Now, there's a lot that I tried to cover in this video, but I'm sure there are some things that I didn't touch on. So if you have any questions about this monitor, let me know in the comment section. I'm going to have a link for this in the description, as well as some of their other OLEDs you might consider, with links to my reviews of those OLEDs as well. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, hit the like button for me, as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.